A lot of people online today. Let's see. Give it a moment. How's everyone doing on this lovely Wednesday? Let's see. Okay. I don't know. Ever since it switched its thing, I have issues with inviting. I have to go figure this one out. There we go. Hello.
Hello. I
How
was
are
like, I've never
you?
joined another person's live before, so let's see how this goes.
It's okay. Yay! Okay, good. Because I don't know, the interface changed a couple weeks ago, and at least for me, and I'm just like, oh, where is this?
Where is everything?
Exactly. Well, it's nice to finally meet you in a pseudo person.
Yeah, pseudo person.
Yep, yep.
How's it
So
going?
how I usually do this kind of stuff is I'll allow us, at least in the beginning, because you'll have your own viewers and I'll have my own viewers, and some of us might not know the other. So
Yeah,
I'll let you talk about you yourself and your work, and then flip flop, and then we can go on from there.
cool. Yeah, where to start? It's always like whenever anyone asks you that kind of stuff, your mind just goes blank.
Oh yes, oh yes. Well, let's start with how long have you been writing? Let's go
Oh
from there.
god. I've probably been self-publishing for like 11 years now, 10 years, something like
Wow.
that. I mean, I have a full-time job, so it's not like I don't have all the time in the world to dedicate to writing, unfortunately. Primarily young adult literature. Going to be branching into new adult soon, but under a different pen name. I'll
Okay.
make that once I actually have something out there. And the latest thing that I did was a time loop novella, where it's actually told from the person's perspective who's resetting every day instead of the person who's reliving and looping every day.
Huh,
Um,
okay. Interesting.
so
I think that's
yeah,
the one I saw because I kind of glanced at your website or the link to your website or whatever platform, and I saw that. No, it was for Amazon. That's what it was. Probably for your Amazon, and it was to that book in particular.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's
So
about
what's the
it.
name of it?
Break free,
There you
and I
go.
got slog through my fairy tale retelling. I feel so bad because I first started working on it years ago, and then I got some bad reviews, and then I read those bad reviews, and then I got too
No.
nervous to publish the other ones. So I have to go back and do some revamping on that series, but I have a whole plan for it once I get going again. But I'm working on I have a Wattpad freebie called Carter Ortiz's Trouble that's getting a full edit because there were I wrote it over the course of like 2 years, so there were some inconsistencies that got posted on the Wattpad freebie. That'll stay free forever, but the edited, polished version that doesn't have inconsistencies will be published like paperback, and that'll happen this year. And there's a couple other things that are hopefully going to happen this year, but I also moved this year, so it's just been utterly chaotic.
Yeah.
So,
No.
how
Well,
about
I understand about the chaos of like a move that was me last year, and that was so frustrating because in the middle of the move, I was trying to publish one of my novellas, and that got super chaotic. So I understand that, but that's exciting.
I published Break Free, I think 1 week before I left. I took the plane flight out here, and I spent probably like 1.5 months moving because I moved cross country. So
Mhm.
it was a big move.
That's a very big move.
Yeah,
But
just
yeah,
as
okay. So how many works do you have in total then? You said you were publishing on and off or a little bits here and there throughout 11 years.
yeah. So
You have to count them.
wait, hold on. At least six. One, two, three,
Yes, there you go.
7. 7.
Hey, there you go. That is really neat.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you write YA and you're trying to branch it out into new adult, because I kind of did a little bit the opposite, where I started with new adult and then decided afterwards to branch in young adult and adult. But I use the same name. And that's one of those questions I always questioned myself after the fact is, should I have switched to 3 different pen names or kept it all? Because for me, they're all epic fantasy. So I'm like, if I branch to maybe a romance, then I would definitely consider a pen name. But I wasn't sure which way to go. And I was like, well, I want people to know, it's me, especially if they're the readers who want to read my other series. And so that kind of threw that question up there. But for my series, here's my spiel. My first series is the Incarn Saga. It's a 4-book shifter series back there, and dark horror fantasy. And that one's set in a kingdom where both humans and the shapeshifters begrudgingly coexist. And they have to decide if they can put aside their differences to fend off an oncoming threat. So you follow my main character as she is drafted into the war and follow her progression throughout a year span. And she's actually a tiger shifter. So that was my first one that got me into writing, and it took me a long time to go through that writing process and figure out everything. So it was my tester series, or the first baby syndrome. So I'm a first child, so I can say that, I feel. But since then, I've recently started to do this split, don't advise it, where I'm publishing 2 things at once. And one of them is my young adult series. I have 2 out right now. The first one's the 12 Tasks. The series is the Jet Chronicles. And this is an adventure portal fantasy series. So you get to travel through a multiverse full of all sorts of mythical beast beings and the like, because I love mythology of all sorts. So I like to use some of the more famous things, some of the more obscure stuff, and just interweave it into this giant multiverse. And I'm really enjoying that one as I write. And simultaneously, again, don't advise it, putting out an adult dark fantasy novella series about Vikings and Norse mythology. And that's a rapid release because they're just, like I said, novellas, so they're very short. And so the next one releases this Friday. Yay, and that will put it to 6 out of my 16 goal on that one. So that one's fun because people will explore all the 9 realms and Yggdrasil, the world tree, and all that fun stuff from Nordic myth. But that's my stuff.
How long are those as novellas?
They have chapters, but those chapters compared to my full-length series are shorter anyway. So, 90 pages, 100 pages, based on how it breaks down at a 6x9 on Amazon's calculations. So right now, that series is the only one that's only ebook currently. They'll come out in print starting this summer. The others are in both hardcover and paperback. And hopefully I'll get them all in audio before too long, but we will see. That is a challenge in and among itself. Hello.
Hello.
But yes. So how about you? Do you just stick with, you said you had some in print and ebook. Do you ever do audio?
I have not ventured into audio. I've actually, it's funny because I've done spoken word. My partner's a musician and I've done spoken word for him, and he's like, we should record your own audiobook someday, but that's a very big time commitment.
That is such a big time commitment.
And most of my
I couldn't imagine.
I end up writing a lot like dual perspectives. So the one that I'm working on right now, Carter Teases Trouble, it's alternating perspectives. It's a young adult romance, a contemporary story. I say romance, but like all of my stories end up becoming ultra serious at some point. So it's like no one can pick up any of my books and expect, oh, this is going to be light and fluffy. Like even my fairy tale retelling is during the fairy tale apocalypse. So it's like,
I love that.
Dark. I don't know.
I love dark. I totally understand that. We're doing well. Sorry, I had one question going, how are we doing tonight? And I feel like we're doing well so far. Yeah. But yeah, no, I love dark fantasy, and that's why both my adult and new adult are definitely, I could consider dark fantasy. They're the ones that I can't guarantee the character you like is going to make it. Kind of dark fantasy. Yeah. Now, my young adult series, I'm trying to keep it lighter. I can't guarantee anything, but it is definitely not what I would consider a true dark fantasy. It's more fun, adventure, etc., so on. But yeah.
Yeah, I got that. That's
So,
it's.
what inspired you? Oh, sorry. Continue.
Oh, no, you go.
I was gonna say, what inspired you to go to this fusion of an apocalypse? You said apocalyptic fairy tale retelling. I'm that's so curious about that.
I've never seen it before. And I think the idea of like the off with their head, with that like being such a common theme in a lot of these kids movies. Like, I mean, like it's legitimate. Like in Alice in Wonderland, they say it so many times, right? So um it was kind of that idea that just percolated of like, you know, those can get really dark and twisted, and like what would occur if you took that entire world, you kind of meshed them all together, and then you basically, I based it on a curse where every single person is kind of basically acting like the darkest versions of themselves.
Mhm.
So, with the exception of a few people that she meets along the way, because obviously you need some allies. So, um, there's a couple people where the curse like just didn't stick for, and then that becomes like the ragtag band of like people who are trying to break the curse so that they can survive this very dark, atmospheric, like everyone's out to get you kind of atmosphere. Um, so yeah, so I don't know, I'll get like that single tidbit, and then I'll just fixate on it, and then I'm like, well, now I have to write a novel. So
I love that. But yeah, no, the dark fantasy twist, I do like that. I know that's really popular right now. The fairy tale retellings is a big thing that's like I said, very popular right now. So write it right away. Catch it
yeah,
while you have that viewership. Because I guess there are what I get would you call them fads in literature where people
there's
just swing something, and I would say they were fads almost. Not to say the books aren't good for permanent reasons, but people do their taste does change as a whole.
yeah, we definitely, I mean, you saw that when we had the Hunger Games and a lot of
Hmm.
dystopian come out at the same time,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, it went in a wave. And then after that, like no one wanted to read dystopian anymore because they're like, all right, I'm done with this. Like, move on to the next thing. Obviously, there's still fans. Like, I love dystopian. I'm never going to stop reading it. But, you know, there's going to be fans that stay with that genre, but the fad is kind of gone. Like, the heat's gone. So, yeah, I definitely think dark fantasy is totally in right now. So
Yes. Oh, I'm gonna ask. Someone was at saying that it was kind of hard to hear some of us, so I'll just try to make sure I enunciate, and maybe you as well, just
yeah,
so everybody can hear. But yeah, no, I remember when I guess it was for me. I remember Twilight kick started the at least growing up my generation of everybody wanting to read vampire books, and no, it's not the first time, but that definitely changed not only literature but cinema and TV shows because there were all these vampire series coming out at the same time, and yeah, things that are trendy. I'm hoping. I really am hoping out there will be a Viking trend that picks up a lot, and I'm trying to predict that it's heading that way with the TV shows and vice versa. The TV shows and the movies that are coming out. I'm like, well, hopefully it hits into the book area. I'm
yeah.
waiting.
I mean, there's definitely, I've seen a lot of trailers for films, so I think you're on it. I love novellas. It's interesting because there's some people that I've seen that say that they won't read novellas. And I'll read pretty much anything, but and what's really interesting to me, I'm like, well, but like novellas are such like, they're such a good snack. Like if you don't have the time to sit down and spend a ton of time getting super invested in a series, like, and you just want to like read something in a day, you know, they're so good for that, like to pick up and just go with it and spend like an hour reading and then you're done with the book. I think also for me, I'm a completionist, so like, and I'm trying to do 100 books this year. That includes novellas. So for me, like short books have a very big appeal right now.
Yeah, nope. I did try to last year I kept trying to up my challenge, and then I think I got burnt out because I like to read thick, meaty books, and it was so stressful because, when my time gets flipped on its end, then I can't achieve that goal. And I was like, no, 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 I'm not going to put that pressure on myself this year. But yeah, no, I like that. I'm going to try to remember that. Like a snack. I kind of now want to tag put a category out there for people. You want a reading snack? Have some novellas. I like that. I'm going to use that if I can.
Yeah, for it. Definitely. It's funny because like the longest book that I'm working on, my longest book that I've ever written right now, and that is my contemporary piece, which I'm like, why is my fantasy not as long as my, usually it's reversed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's because it's also dual perspectives. So you're getting like essentially like two stories in one. So because it flips back and forth. So you get all of their side stuff that happens to them too, whereas normally you wouldn't see all of that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So I'm so curious with other authors who write multiple perspectives in a single book, because I don't do that. I follow my main character. I have huge casts, like insane amount of casts on some of them, but I still only follow one character's perspective, which for me makes it's easier. It's hard for me to picture writing other people's point of views and getting in all these characters' heads. And if some character knows something that another character doesn't, trying to keep up with all that. So how do you approach all that then?
Uh yeah. So I do you write in first person or third?
I
First,
write third.
third. I write first. So for most of them. So yeah, some of my stuff I am switching to third for this ensemble piece that I'm doing, which I've never tried to do, but I'm also doing limited third, so that it's still kind of in their heads, but it's like jumping from person to person to person each chapter. So I'm working on that. The first big edit that I'm doing on that is specifically for head hopping. So it's like specifically to make sure that I'm staying in their perspective, that I'm not switching to anyone else. But the first piece that I ever did where I decided to go dual perspective was in the collapse, because I wrote Hipstopia. It's a young adult satirical novel. It's a hipster dystopian that goes south. And it's a novella, and I wrote it as a joke because someone on Twitter said, why are there no hipster dystopian novels? And I'm like, consider it done.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. So I wrote it and I liked it. It was okay. I published it. It was good. It was a good start. But The Collapse is the sequel. I took it much more seriously. The first book in the series is short and sweet, but the second book, I gave the villain a perspective. And I wrote from their dual perspectives at first. Like, it was amazing because he's by far my favorite. His name's Murphy. The reason why he's the ruler of Hipstopia is because he has the thickest and biggest glasses of them all. And his attitude is just phenomenal because it's just such a good like villainous perspective. He just wants to be in charge, wants to be in power, but wants everyone to like follow what he thinks all hipsters should be. So it's just fun, but it's because it's satire, so it's not taking itself too seriously, but everyone who read it ended up falling in love with like his perspective in book 2, because
I love it.
yeah. So what I did to prepare was I created 2 different playlists. I listen to music while I'm writing and editing. I know a lot of people can't do that. I also listen to music with lyrics, which also confuses a bunch of people, but so for their perspectives, I had 2 different playlists. So every time I switched chapters, because I wanted it to be seamless from one scene to the next, I switched playlists and like waited a couple minutes to get into the separate mindset and then wrote the next chapter. When I edited it, I went through it so many times, and when I did a final read through, I actually read through all of Jason's perspectives at once, and then read through all of Murphy's perspective at once, because I wanted it
Okay.
as it was standing alone, because I
Mm-hmm.
already knew it made sense intermingled. So, and that's how I like checked for voice. If anything Murphy said didn't really fit him, I would change it. So
Wow, okay. That is a I've never heard of that technique before, but that is kind of cool.
that's
Yeah, no, I
actually
have
with
oh yes.
Carter is I've done all of his chapters, and now I'm working on Emma's chapters, because Emma is not Carter, so she cannot sound like him. So
I think it's always so neat to find out from different authors how they approach writing their novels and how they keep everything straight depending on what kind of book they're writing. I mean, for me, if I flip the screen around, you saw my poor desk area. I have a whole wall in front of me that's covered in sticky notes and diagrams and print out images that, I mean, I think I've said it before, but it kind of looks like one of those find the murderer case scenes because it's all a hodgepodge, but it makes sense to me.
yeah.
So I guess that's really all that matters. But it's all how you kind of organize and keep things straight. But that's a cool technique when you're doing multiple personalities to check them separately, read through the chapters. Because yeah, I'm trying to consider writing a standalone, which I've never done before, and use three perspectives. But because it's so foreign to me, I keep pushing that one off because I'm like, am I ready for this? I don't know.
It's a fun challenge. I mean, when I tried to do my ensemble, and I'm saying tried because it's not out yet, so it's like I'm still gonna edit it. It's nowhere near being done, but it's it's interesting to take you out of your own element, right? Because it's you get I got comfortable with what I've been doing, and I was like, you know what, I need something else. I need to challenge myself. So I need to try to switch to an ensemble. I've done third person in the past, and I have not liked it, and I've shelved those novels completely. But I also think that I did write those when I like was starting my career. So there's such a difference, like when you start versus where you are now, years later, when you've done this before and you're experimenting, but it's also the storytelling aspect of it is like an old hat.
Yeah.
So
No, that is. I mean, yes, it's one of those things like anything you get used to your practice, you get used to your comfort zone and your writing style because it took me a long time to write my first book. And nowadays it's just easy. The writing process is far easier. The marketing though can be hit or miss, but the writing itself is easy.
I'm terrible at marketing. Like
Well,
everyone's
you're
like,
on you're
oh
right
yeah, I should
here, and
like
book talk and TikTok seem
doing.
to be a great place. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, mostly on right now, I'm just trying to like post fun stuff that is not really writing related, because I know that like if you post too much, and it's also not great. It's like it's a fine line between like marketing and annoying people.
yes, yes. Yes, no,
So
I don't know if you've looked at some of mine, but like I try to rotate things. So I'll do some, fun questions, but most of my questions either come from the fantasy realm concept or like questions of the day. And other times they're, your favorite book kind of concept or stuff to just because it's fun to hear what people answer and get them engaged. And sometimes I ask some really off the wall funny things. And again, yeah, like you said, I mean, it's great to talk about your work, but it's also great to just engage and have fun.
yeah.
So outside of TikTok, where else are you found? You said Twitter at one point.
Yeah, I am not very active on other social media platforms. I was very active on G Plus, and then that disappeared forever. So I was like participating in I was a moderator in a huge writing community over there, and it was like when they finally announced that they were going to shut it down, I was devastated. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was it was very sad. I do have Instagram. I mostly post photos of my cats on there, same username, if you feel like seeing my cats. But it's not really writing related. It's kind of always been a catch-all because I dabble in a lot of different art stuff, and then my cats are my cats. I love them. So
My dog is my dog. I love her, and I understand. I'll occasion, but like I feel like that's fair. For Instagram, it's photo based, and I'm not good with beauty shots with my. I can't do the bookstagram kind of beauty shot stuff. So throw in a dog or throw in a fun picture from your latest hike or whatever. But yeah, no, I agree.
when I
Yeah.
joined TikTok, I joined very intentionally with making it just book related. Um, because all my other social media platforms are just kind of catch-alls. So it's like, you know what, if I'm going to add another social media platform in the mix, I need to be specific.
hmm Yeah, no, I've Instagram and Twitter are my weakest links when it comes to social media, but it's because I know I'm not really good with the photography for one, and then the other one I just have never figured out, but until recently, and then someone's like, why don't you just talk about or share other people's writing prompts? Because there are a lot of people who like to chatter and talk about that. I was like, oh, okay. So, testing different things out right now just because I don't get it. I don't get it.
It's where I go for cats. I don't know. It's so funny. I'm like, oh, if I want to learn book stuff, I go to TikTok. If I want to look at cats, I go to Instagram.
Hey,
So,
all fair, all fair.
um,
Okay,
yeah, it's so funny because
so
yeah, are you on Instagram? And I'll be like, sure, you can like my cat photos.
I mean, post a picture with your cat
Yeah,
and slide a book cover in there
I have
next to
done
the
that.
thing.
It's so funny though. Like Instagram knows whenever I am posting anything that is like book content related because I get nothing. So it's like I have to be, if I'm doing a reel or something, it has to be like a little tagline at the very end and like nothing else. It has to be like hidden, like a subliminal message. Because if I do any more than like 0.2 seconds, it's like this is marketing. We're not showing it to anyone. I'm like,
Oh
okay.
man. Yeah, nope. All the tips and tricks that again don't get that platform as well. Some people do great. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I always love when people know these things that I don't and be like, pass me your knowledge, give me your wonderful knowledge. Like for me, I've never done a Wattpad worked no, had a Wattpad. There you go. And how was that experience for you? Because you said that that's how you started, or is that you still
No,
continue that?
I'm just doing some freebies on there because I'm doing young adult contemporary romance that is not really like it's not the I don't know, I don't want to undersell myself because I'm just having fun with it.
Hey, that's fine.
So it's not one of like the main meals of my writing career, I guess. And I'm doing a
Hmm
lot of things. It's almost dinner time. I'm doing a lot of food analogies tonight. Uh, so I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of having fun with it, and I know that you kind of do occasionally have to give things away for free for people to like get invested in your writing.
Yeah.
I understand that. So the benefit of posting this on Wattpad is that like people can test the waters, they can decide whether or not they like my style, and then maybe they can invest in my other stuff that isn't free. Um, Wattpad I had more success with when the forums were open. They also shut down those forums, and I don't know if anyone's ever like kind of found something similar. Reddit forums kind of opened instead, and there's been a lot of stuff on Discord, but I've never really been able to get into a lot of that.
hmm
So for me, it was like Wattpad was just kind of like, I'm just gonna throw up this story every Friday and just kind of publish as I go. They're decently polished on like the line editing level because I
hmm
did line edit them before they went up, but continuity based because I like essentially published over a 2-year period. Like I definitely changed one of the characters' names. at one point in the novel. They changed hair colors, eye colors, like all of that, because all that continuity comes back like later when I'm doing like full read throughs. And this was not, when I was publishing, it wasn't full read throughs, it was chapter by chapter read throughs. So when I do publish it, and that's what I'm working on right now, I'm editing it for continuity, I'm editing it for line edits, I'm doing all of that now. But so it's like, yeah, you can read the free one, but there's gonna be some problems. And if you want the polished version, then you do have to pay for it. But it's kind of a fun way to, I don't know, give something back to the reading community without expecting anything in return.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do that with freebies too. Like occasionally, you know, I have a couple of books that are enrolled in KU, and sometimes I'll just give those away for free as well. But small potatoes. So when you're a small time, sometimes it's just better to get the book out there than to make
That's
money
true. That's true.
initially.
I mean, and that's the thing. For me, all my books are Kindle Limited when it's the ebook version, and that's worked for me so far. But I know there are other people who do a different approach, anyways. But kind of like that, because you're able to do that, it's nice to be able to, like you said, do a freebie push for maybe a first of a series just to see, hey, you're not certain yet? Try the free one. If you like it, get the next one, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I don't know, do you use newsletters? Because I do, and I have a couple free short stories that I give out as soon as people sign up, and as well as samples of my first of series so far, so people can get a taste if they haven't read my stuff before. Again, trying to get them, interested and see how they feel about my writing.
Yeah, I know. I also have a newsletter, and same deal. I have a couple short stories on there as well as ebooks. So they're just downloadable, which is nice. They get delivered upon sign up. So yeah.
I love it.
I've been building my newsletter list back up. I took a long hiatus from self-publishing because I had
Mhm.
4 works that I was trying to seek traditional publishing for. A couple of them were first in a series, and a couple of them were standalones, and nothing's bitten. Of course, because of the move, I also had to take a break from querying during the
Mhm.
move, so it's been chaos. But I basically have decided, like, I'm going to revamp, get CPs, get beta or alphas and betas, and then just make sure that these books are worth their salt, and then go about self-publishing them, because I'm not hitting, and none of these series hit on the current trends, but that doesn't mean that they can't become popular. So
That's
it's,
true. That is very
no one's
true,
really,
especially when you're indie. It's you can publish off trend and get your own following, carve out your own readership and kind of stuff like that. So that's kind of like what I did with my full length series, not my novellas because they were novellas, but my full length series. I submitted both of them in different times, just to see. But yeah, they weren't necessarily hitting the trends. And for my young adults, I write big books, and so it was way too big for the current standard in publishing for the number of words or pages for young adults. So I was like, well, I think the book's worth its enough, so put it out there for people. Because I mean, for me, I write so people can enjoy them, and it doesn't necessarily, I would love millions of followers and readers and fans, but I'll take what I get, because I'm here just to write stuff that I enjoy writing, I enjoy reading, and I hope other people enjoy it too. So
yeah, no, that's it. That's exactly how I feel. Is like, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't love doing it, because
hmm
I was actually talking to someone about rejection today. It was an interesting conversation, because um, I think with being an indie author and author in general, like even traditional published authors have to go through rejection after rejection after rejection, and it toughens your skin a little bit. It teaches you how to take criticism pretty really well, or it burns you out completely because of it. So it's something that you have to learn with any creative art, I think, actually, because you're gonna have people that don't like what you do. It's not
hmm
for everyone. And, you know, not every book is for me. I don't pick up every book and go, this is my favorite book ever, you know, so I can't expect someone else to pick up all of my books and say, this is my favorite book ever, because that's just unrealistic. I would love it,
I mean,
but
there's something for everyone, but not everybody loves everything.
Yeah.
And I do think, kind of going with the rejection thing, you know, it's I like to think of it, especially when it comes in a form of a review, is a way to kind of self-analyze. And if it's one oddball review, I'll shrug it off. If there's like a small trend, that's something, you know, you want to pay attention. Like if the pacing's off, or maybe a character is flat or whatever, that triggers me. So I'm like, okay, so the next thing I want to improve upon. And I think that's a good way to approach when it comes to critiques on books. But I mean, I've had some funny ones. I've had one where they were like, it was too dark. It's a dark fantasy, by the way. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to say that one I'm not too worried about. That's fine. It wasn't for this person, but I'm not worried about that.
yeah.
So, you know, it comes with, you know, the territory. You have to get used to critiques slash, you know, even to the point of ridicule sometimes, when someone just really, maybe it's their bad day, but they just want to gnash out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And hopefully those are few and far between.
Hopefully. Yeah, the on the it's too dark side of things, it's so funny because people are so different on that level, right? Is that sometimes you see on TikTok, like, people are like, oh, this is a dark story, and like, for me, I'm like, give me it, like, give me it, and then the other people are like, I don't want to read it. So it's such a it's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
interesting who it ends up attracting. I don't want to read it. So it's such a it's
yeah,
so
yeah.
interesting who it ends up attracting, you know, based on the genre alone. You know, it's people like what they like, so that's
Hmm.
good.
And that's another thing when it comes to critiques. Sometimes people may misperceive something and then get, you know, huffy or whatever because they got a book and they expected one thing and it wasn't, and they weren't happy about it. I know for my Shifter series, I realized early on I had to be very explicit, saying this is a war dark Shifter series. This is not a romance. Where I get a lot of people who like Shifter romance and download it, and then they're like, this isn't a Shifter romance. And I'm like, no, I never said it was anywhere. So there are people who just, you know, they want what they want, and you know, if they get something and they expect one thing and it's not, that's, you know, is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I've ever called any of my books romance except the one that I'm editing right now, because they just get too
Okay.
dark. And even this one, I don't know.
You
I feel I
you
might
can
not
have
like.
a dark romance. Yeah. I think you can have a dark romance. It's just, it doesn't have to be happy. It just has to have a big enough romantic element to be qualified romance. That's my point of view. But again, I like dark things.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's focused on their relationship, so it is, I guess, by definition, a romance because it focuses on the relationship between the two people. But to be determined if it's dark or not, I guess. I don't know. I should probably ask my future beta readers once I'm done with this round of editing and be like, all right, do I categorize this as a dark romance, or is it like happy enough that it's just a romance?
Is there like a gray? Is there a middle field, moderately dark romance
The
in the
gray.
gray? Add another descriptor in there. Carve out your own thing.
There's probably some subgenre that I am not yet familiar with that it would fall into.
Yeah, there are so many, and that's what the fun thing is. Like, I always love seeing how people, when they talk about their own work, how they describe it. And wait, I have a thing that just popped up for you. I think it says, I love dark romance and fantasy romance. My book series is a fantasy romance. So there you go. There's someone else who likes the dark fantasy fusion concept. But lost my train of thought. But there you go.
It happens. It happens.
It does. It does.
So you're on your two series right now simultaneously?
Yes, I saved your gritting teeth. Yes. Do not
I
advise.
No, well, that's what. So when I published In a Blue Moon and I got some like negative reviews, I like moved on to another series and I was like, let me just write like another book to just be a palate cleanser. And then
Mhm.
I'll go back to this and I'll make sure that, and the reviews weren't even bad. They were like 4 stars, but it was because the reviews were so well critiqued that I was like,
Mm.
man, and they all said the kind of the same thing. And I'm like, I could have done
See,
this a little bit
trend.
better. Like, I could have made this a 5-star book, and it's not, and I'm upset that it's a 4-star book. So I took a break, and now it's like so hard for me to go back to that series. So I commend you for doing two at the same time because it
Well,
is
the
a
thing about
struggle.
that one, I mean, yes, I do have to put pause one when I write and all this kind of stuff, but it's interesting processes because I'm always working on different layers for different stages for different books. So, in the morning I usually do new material. So depending on whichever series I'm writing, but in the afternoon I could be editing the other series. So in one sense, it kind of keeps both kind of fresh in my mind. But also, right before I do a big edit, I do try to reread the prior one. So this is why I don't read a lot of books as much as I want because I'm rereading mine thousands of times.
Yeah,
Between rounds
yeah,
thousands of times. But I'm very familiar with my own work. And but yeah, no, it is, I mean, I like it because I can potentially reach totally different people and hopefully there is some overlap because that's always beneficial. But on the other hand, it's fun. I love to express myself in whatever way just feels right. And so going really dark and gritty for the Norse mythology twist or just fun and fantastical for the young adult. I mean, I love them both, so why not express myself in those different ways?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was debating also, like going back to the pen name earlier, like debating just doing
Hmm.
all or my name, but I I think I'm gonna go like really heavy on the romance and spice aspect of the books that I do in new adult slash possible adult. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I kind of want the two categories so
Yes,
that it's just
I can
easier
see
for
that.
readers. I'm still gonna advertise them all on the same platform because young adult readers
Hmm.
are gonna become adult readers someday. So
Hmm.
it's I think it's fine to have that cross reference, but because I'm not gonna like create a new website or create a new
Yeah.
TikTok or my pen name. I'm just gonna kind of,
Yeah, I've
go.
seen people with like their pen names as different pages on their website. So if someone clicks a link to their pen name, it'll just go to that page, but it's still on their main website, and then it can easily then navigate to your main page or your other pen names and stuff like that. And again, it's not a whole rebranding. And yeah, because yeah, that would be a lot. I've heard other people do separate everything, separate newsletters, separate. I'm like, that's so much extra work. It
It's,
works for them, great, but not that it's so much work.
my heart just hurts thinking about it. I'm like, I can't do it. Are pen names common? I am not using a pen name.
Oh, good. Yeah,
Some
this one you can
people,
see everything.
some people argue that because I go by my first and middle initial in my last name, that that's a pen name. Um, I don't think it's a pen name, but I mean, because legally my first initial is R and my middle initial is A. But I think pen names are probably fairly common.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that I mean, if you look at a lot of romance authors, right, they have names that are like too perfect to be their natural, like their born name, I should say, like the name that they were
Mm-hmm.
given at birth. Like it's just too perfect for a romance writer. And there's a lot of people that do write romance under pen names, but there's also a lot of people that just write under their regular name too. So there's different reasons for everyone using pen names as well. So it's kind of your
Yeah.
own personal preference. It's
Yeah, I mean, again, I have not branched that way, but people usually can do it, break it up by age bracket or thematic things and genre. So, I mean, you could have pen names for each different subcategory if you so choose. And sometimes the strategy is, especially in romance, is what I've heard is if you there's romance love people who love all sorts of romance, but then there's some who just like the boss tile, or some that just like shifter. And so when you have those pen names, you can really market to those crowds, and it seems to work for a lot of people who use them. It seems also like a lot of work to try to market two different pen names. But
Yeah.
I'm also on the side that it's less is more for me.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, it's difficult enough promoting your first name, let alone whatever other names you choose to write on. But yeah, I think one of my cats just came in, so sorry. I'm a little distracted.
Don't worry. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, publishing. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. When you I'm reading this aloud because I'm also probably going to share this onto my YouTube channel with your permission later. And the commentary doesn't pop up, but someone was noting how a publisher asked her if let me see. Sorry, I'm reading backwards. Publisher asked me if I wanted to use a pen name, and I told him no, so I'm using my actual name. And I think obviously that is your choice, and you have to stand with whatever you want. I like the concept that I can use my name. And right now, since I'm not married yet, I'm using my maiden name. And even when I do get married, I'm going to keep my maiden name because it's a way, again, to keep that namesake alive. And I really like that concept. So I really wanted to make sure I used my own name as much as possible. That's why another reason why I've kept mine versus created something fantastical. But that's up to you. It is totally
Yeah.
up to each person.
I went by RA Desilets because the first critique group that I was ever in assumed that my main character was female because I am me. So they
Interesting. Okay.
and that was not the case. Essie Hinton went by her initials when she wrote The Outsiders, so like that's one of my favorite books, and I just decided, I'm like, you know what, I can do that. Also, my initials are RAD, which is rad, so I'm like, yeah, that works.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, no, that's interesting because so far I've only written female main protagonists so far. I do want to dabble switching the script down the line in different series potentially, but for me, that was just a comfort thing. I was just like, it's probably easier for me, especially starting off my writing career, to write from a perspective closer to my own with these characters. But no, that is interesting. I didn't even think about that, but it makes sense. People assume whatever gender you identify is what you're going to write for your protagonist. I did not think about that, but that makes sense.
Not always accurate. So,
nope,
yeah,
wait, think about Harry Potter. Can we case in point? So it's not always the case.
3 books that I wrote actually were male MCs. So, yeah. Huh? The first 3 that I published, yeah. So, and then the next 4 were female. Yep. So, yeah. It was funny.
Sorry.
I actually got asked the question, like, why do I only write from male perspectives when I had the first 3 books out? Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know. I had an idea and I went with it. There was no real logical reason. It was just that character felt like that was right for the story. So, yeah.
Since you've written both, is one easier for you than another, or are they just both, when they come and they work?
They come. Sorry, my cat is yeah, I think when I was younger, it was I have 3 older siblings, and lived with my 2 older brothers were around a lot. My sister is a bit older than me, so she didn't like live at home with us. So I always kind of wanted to fit in with my brothers. So when I was younger, so I don't know, it was and I'm also a video game nerd, so I just kind of grew up around guys. So I think that was why when I started writing, it was just gravitated towards, because you write what you know, and if you're around like video game nerds and like a lot of people who are, male, like that was what I felt comfortable with. And then I mean, I am also, so I don't know. I mean, I just ended up switching a bunch. So it's been.
I love it. No, like for me, I always grew up like kind of what you were saying with in and around friends who were men, boys, and so I think that's why a lot of my series, the young adult ones, a little different, but my dark ones are definitely male dominated cast. Even though I have a female protagonist, it's just it was something that was for this one. It was made sense to me and it was comfortable with me, but putting her in a situation where she's being drafted and going to war and everything, and kind of playing around with it was just made sense to me. And then with my Nordic one, um I'm dealing with a bunch of Vikings going out. So there's, yes, you have a shield maiden character who's there, not my main character in this one, but a shield maiden character, and then I have my main character who's pulled into a situation where she's not comfortable with, sailing out to do an adventure and getting her into that whole new reality and world for her in her situation. But yeah, no, it is interesting because you write what you know. Even if people are writing fantasy or dystopian, you are still writing what you know in many ways that people might not expect or understand outside of the author.
Yeah. And I think a lot of my more contemporary stuff or stuff that plays on my contemporary stuff, there's certain little tidbits that are like very realistic moments to things that I've experienced or seen or witnessed. But it's not all based on that, you know, and it's probably not the thing that you expect. Like it might be a side character says something really small and it's actually something that like I've seen or I've experienced. So I know what that side character is feeling in that moment. But it's such an offhanded thing that you would never be like, oh, this person's writing this specific line of dialogue because it is something that like really actually occurred in their life. Like that's the way that I try to like sprinkle in these tidbits so that I flesh out like all of the side characters, you know, because you also want them to be realistic as much as possible.
Well, I had a character that I needed to give her some kind of, after doing all these battles, she needed some kind of injury, but something she could survive. So I gave her a issue with her shoulder dislocating, and an aggravation that it would reoccur at like the worst moments. And that was inspired because in college, I knew a guy with that actually happened. And so in college, because I knew I was going to go in writing and was heading this direction, I did. I totally sat him down and be like, how does it feel? Tell me more. I need to know.
It's I've seen that a lot of other authors do that are like, what did I search the internet for this week?
Yes, yes. Most of mine are like ancient weaponry and obscure mythology facts. But it's always fun to hear some, especially people who are doing murder mysteries. They have some really juicy stuff that they.
I mean, you have to learn it. One
Oh
of
yes.
my characters, one of her favorite things is she's kind of a anyway, she really likes archery and she really likes architecture. So I had to like self-teach myself all of these things about architecture that I didn't know before. So it's like you really have to like be willing to learn all of these different things depending on what your character almost decides they're interested in, because it's, as much as I want to say that I'm driving, it's like once I get a character idea, it's kind of like they take over. It's not, you know, it's their story. It's not my story, but.
Well, no, that's when I was backing up. So published in a weird order. But my young adult series that I'm putting out now is actually the reason why I wanted to be a writer. It's based off characters and storylines and plots and backstory, et cetera, so on, that my sister and I developed as children during our imaginary play, upgraded, repurposed. But I always wanted to share that universe, or multiverses. Now I know that's what you call it. As a child, I had no idea. But because of that, my character uses different weapons during her journeys and gets magical items, and I was always wanting to do what she did. One, so I could better write it in my future life, and also because it was really cool. And because of that, I actually did become a really big competitive archer competitive archer at one point, and now I do axe throwing, and hopefully we'll be taking some swordsmanship classes this summer because I love that stuff. It's just fun
Yeah.
to learn for work purposes. See how much
Abs-
I can write off. This is I'm a fantasy writer, and this is a write off, right? How does that work? Who has a legal?
This is for work.
This is
Absolutely.
for work. What can I get away with?
I mean, it's yeah, whatever you give your main character, if you want it to be realistic, you kind of have to learn it yourself, at least a little bit. You have to learn
Hmm.
at least at the very least the lingo and the definitions of everything at the very least. So
Yes, yes, and it's one of those things. And when you are an expert in or pseudo expert in an area, and you start catching other people's mistakes, you're like, oh. Like when I learned archery and started watching all these fantasy flicks, I'm like, oh no, that's not how it works. That's poor form.
yeah, I'm like terrified that someone's gonna read my work and just be like, yeah, this is not real. Like this is
Okay,
not
here's
how.
the thing. Here's the hard truth. It's going to happen somewhere
I've
at some point. You just try to minimize it,
yeah,
but it will happen. You can
but
do
heck,
your best.
if you self-publish and it's a small tweak, you can always just tweak it and post a new version. So that's the
Yeah.
benefit. Being in control of your own work is that you always have the benefit of going back and fixing something, especially if an expert does say this is wrong.
Yep, yep. But and that is a very nice thing about, like you said, indie publishing or self-publishing, is the fact that one, you can have 1,002 eyes on something and still a spelling error will slip through. But when you publish and you have that control, you can always go back and edit and update, little things here and there. Or if you really want to take an old work like you're talking about and totally give it a whole new facelift, you can do that too and then re-release it as second edition. You can do
Yeah.
that. And all of a sudden, give it a facelift. Or same thing when we're talking about trends, how book covers are trendy as well. And there, I didn't realize when I got into this that you have to, like, after so many years, you almost need to redesign it again and again to what is trendy for that particular genre. And having that control makes it a lot easier for you to have a product you like.
Yeah. Mine need an overhaul. It's been out for a while and I need to redo some of the covers, but I don't know. Because that's the thing with trends though, is it's going to change again. And if it changes and it like goes back to the way it was before, I'm going to be like, well, now I have to republish everything with the old cover. So,
Yeah, and I guess there's that thing of, depending on where you are in the series, you probably need to finish the series to allow people who are buying through to have the same cover before you re-release a cover. And make sure you make that announcement to give people, if you want, that uniform series, buy now, because at this date we're really releasing the
yep.
second version.
And it's not going to be, yeah. Uh, I saw someone who had the paperback cover of War of Two Queens and how it's like way taller than the other paperbacks, and I'm like, why did they do that?
I remember so many people getting angry about that and seeing pictures all over the board about that issue, which
Yeah,
mildly funny, and also everybody learns things, and so pay attention. If you publish in a certain size, keep it consistent. If you publish in a certain type of cover, glossy or matte, keep it consistent.
it doesn't bother me. I don't know. I don't know why it doesn't bother me, but it doesn't. I know it does bother other people, so I'm gonna try to keep my books as consistent as possible. But for me, I don't know. It doesn't faze me.
Yeah. I mean,
Ever
in the end, the story is not the cover. The covers are pretty. It's the inside that counts.
The cover will probably get you more sales, though. Unfortunately.
Yeah, no, my first book I ever released, as far as Claus Leland. Yeah, the first cover, I was so proud of it at when I released this initial cover because this is the second version. And right before I was about to release book two, I actually had a cover designed in that original format for it as well, but I couldn't. I was trying to educate myself on why I wasn't making sales and what I need to start doing, and slowly figuring out the questions to ask because I had no idea. And eventually decided that I needed to go to trend, at least what was trendy at the moment, and revamp my covers and got a new designer and everything. And that seemed to do very well. So a little facelift might not hurt. It's a little expensive for you, but hopefully in the long term pays off more. So that's the concept, I guess.
Yeah.
Yep.
So much to
yeah.
always so much to do. But
Oh
it's
my
a welcome
goodness.
challenge. It is. It's good. It's
So
fun.
when is your next book coming out?
Oh gosh. I mean, I just got off the release of Break Free. So I originally had a schedule that I am like no longer following because of what happened with with the move. So my next book was supposed to be released in March, but that did not happen. So I don't know, to be determined. I'm diligently working on it right now, so everything's kind of like a couple months delayed, I think, from my original schedule.
And I feel that pain. I was have a meticulous schedule planned out always at the beginning of the year because I am trying to publish these multiple rapid release as well as a full length, and trying to keep everything succinct and working out. And of course, life happens. And so for my novella series, I'm at this point a month behind. So the book that's coming out this Friday was supposed to come out last month, but I had to push it off because it wasn't ready, and just life happens. And again, that pushes everything else off for the publishing thing. And I'm like, am I going to meet my goal? I'm a very goal oriented person. I don't like missing things.
I completely understand that. Yeah, it's bumming me out that I have this very like meticulous schedule, and it's just not. I'm not. I just have to throw it all away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing: you have a job, you have a day job, and this is your night job, and you have to like be able to pay the bills, so you have the time to do this. I mean, it makes sense. Life happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean it'll be great when I get some of these off my plate because I just because I had those 4 that were in query mode for so long, I feel like I can achieve kind of a sort of rapid release over the next year and a half. It'll at least be rapid for me, but yeah. So I'm looking forward to like because once these are off my plate because I'm in editing mode with all of these. And I really like the first part, which is the writing part and the drafting part, all of that. And I'm really fast. It's so funny because people are like, you're so fast at writing. I can write 25,000 words in a day, which is like terrifying to some people. They're like, how do you do that? Like, here's the deal. It takes me a month to edit like 5,000 words. So I can write super fast, but it slows down my editing process when I write that quickly because when you're writing such rapid fire, like you're making a lot of mistakes and you have to go back and fix. And that's fine.
Yeah,
it's
I
my
mean,
process.
there's always any mistakes, but yeah. I'm kind of that. I feel like I write at a decent pace, not anything mind-blowingly fast, but at a decent pace that, again, as long as there's no other outside emergencies, I can sit down and I have a set number of pages I reach a day because I go by page number versus word count or anything, and can go through and I can predict how long things are going to take because I know how big the book or novella is supposed to be, and that seems to work for me. But because I do a moderate pace, yes, there's going to be edits, but there's far less than I think some other people because I do try to be conscious of a lot of things and make sure my first draft is not horrible. I'm trying. It's still not great, but trying.
Yeah, No, my first draft is definitely not polished in any way, shape, or
It
I
only matters about the end one, the last one. That's what
yeah,
matters.
yeah, it's true. And I underwrite when I write my first draft. So like I'll go in with I'm a plotter, so I'll go in with an outline and then it's kind of like filling in the blanks. And then when I do my first draft edit, my first draft is usually 10,000 words less than my final piece because I end up filling in the setting description and most of the descriptions and stuff the second time around. And then I can take that a lot slower so that I'm not like making those inconsistencies or any of those like mistakes that might continuity issues, you know. Because if I'm adding all of the description at once throughout, then it kind of becomes different. But it's always interesting because people have a lot of my friends have the opposite problem where they write something that's 110,000 words and they're like, I need to cut like 20,000 words from this, and I'm like, how do you do that on your first draft? I don't understand, because I always end up with like a 60,000 word draft and I needed to get it to like 70,000 words.
Oh, see, I'm that problem. I write meaty books. So when my first draft comes out, I usually taper down a little bit, but I'm not afraid to do a large book. So my full lengths, yes, including my young adult one, they're 130, 140,000 word books. I write meaty books, but I think they work for my story. I like to tell the stories. I like complicated stories too, so I need that space.
Yeah, no, I mean, and everyone has their different style, and that's great. Like, and, you know, I read pretty much everything. It's so interesting because I read super long books like that, and I also read shorter books, but my books all tend to be on the shorter side, at least for right now. I don't know if that'll change, maybe. No idea. And I think it also depends on the story, you know.
Yeah,
Because some things are just quicker to tell because if they're set in a world that doesn't have a lot of fantastical elements, like there's only so many ways you can describe someone's classroom. You know
fair
what I
enough,
mean?
fair enough.
Especially in contemporary society, like a classroom's a classroom. Like you don't really need to spend all this time like adding description. But if you're in a fantasy world, you do want to establish those elements. You do want to make it an environment where your reader is immersed in it. You know.
Yeah,
So
definitely. And I like a lot of action in my books. That's what I like to watch and read and invest my time in. So I do have a lot of movement going on, but again, it's one of those things. I like the big books. I cannot lie. And that's why when I challenged myself to try to get into novellas, it was another reason just seeing, can I tell a story in this length versus this length? So, and it seems to work. Some I think are a little more succinct than maybe the others, but again, it's a learning thing and I'm having fun with it and people seem to be enjoying it thus far, so that's good. That's what we
yeah,
want.
that is the hope. That is the hope.
Yeah. Well, I know you haven't eaten and I know it's around dinner time. Is there any other questions you want to ask, answer, let people know, and then I guess time for dinner.
Yeah, not right now. I mean, I'd love to do this again when we have some other books to talk about. And
Yeah.
one is I'm gonna get KU, and I'm planning. There's like a lot of authors on my list that I'm planning on like just reading and just throwing writing out the window for like 2 months and just doing a reading R&R.
Okay, I was wondering where this time came from. I don't know where that time comes from. Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I'll figure out when to fit those in, but I always love reading indies, so it's like whenever I see something new, I'm like, I want to check this out, and let's add
Well,
it
now
to
that
my
I know.
star list.
Well, that's the thing is like I learned from the here that you can do wish lists on Amazon. So every time someone talks about a book, I'm like, oh, put that there, so I don't forget about them. So when I do have that theoretical time to read, I have my list already there to pick off the top, and I'm like, oh, I like this. This works.
Yeah, I also
Well,
have that physical pile, so. You know.
I love it.
All right.
Well,
Anything
it
else
was
you?
fabulous meeting you.
It's
Sorry,
very
what?
nice meeting.
Yeah, and we should do this again in a little while. Again, like I said, when you've released another book, or not even, we can always just talk about
Yeah.
stuff.
Process, the ever growing process.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, it never ends. It's an
No.
endless process. That's what I feel like. Well, until I see you again, have a
Yeah.
lovely evening. And to everybody who's watched, goodbye.